And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening. Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Couldn't be better. I'm excited to jump in on our power rankings this week. I'm curious. I feel a little pressured into putting one team in there, and you could probably guess which it is.
Well, so can I tell you? So just so people know,
uh,
I do not get to see. So every power ranking that we've ever done, ever.
Yes.
I never get to see your power rankings before the show starts. So I'm going off of the cuff. Boy, today did I get time to make some notes on your power rankings. You're in deep trouble, buddy.
Oh God. No, I don't want. I mean, I don't want to hear it. I just realized my input's on the wrong thing on my. Sorry, I got distracted.
I mean, your mic sounds good. Either way, boy, do I got some things that I need to tell you here tonight. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. That I want to start off by saying
I'm not. I'm going to get ahead of this. I'm putting him in there because I feel like that I have to. I mean, there's nobody else there. I almost regret not putting Texas A&M over LSU, which is what you're referencing right now. I really thought about it. I think that there right now is not an answer, and LSU is promptly ranked in the top 10 on the AP poll. So I think it's fine to put them at 10. I think other teams are going to prove themselves ahead of them at some point. This isn't like, I was proven that LSU
could easily lose this week. Lose this weekend. But at the same time, I mean, look, there comes a part where this is the debate that I had. You ready? LSU, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. That's the debate that I had.
Notre Dame shouldn't be top 10 at the current moment.
I mean, when you get down to brass tacks, the problem that I have with Notre Dame is that they're beat up. The truth is, I probably would have put them above Texas A&M, obviously with the head-to-head and situational stuff. But, man, they're so beat up. Ben Morrison being out's a bump. That's a big loss, dude. I mean, like, you can't get around that.
It is, but it isn't. I think that they've got enough depth that they're going to be fine. But, yeah, you're losing your top defensive back, and you have to step up and play with a bunch of freshmen. Yeah, it's going to be an issue. Their remaining schedule until they play USC, they're really not getting challenged by any teams that have any elite receivers that are like really going to stress that secondary. The USC game is going to be the game that's going to probably be the most stressful. Like the one that we're really going to see if there's going to be a problem or not. It helps that all those young guys, Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs, get a few weeks to kind of get adjusted and ready to play.
Don't you dare underestimate the midshipmen or the Black Knights either.
I know that they have changed their offensive approach, but they're not exactly a potent passing attack. So I don't want to hear that.
Notre Dame is going to get upset by one of the service academies. One of the service academies is taking down Notre Dame.
LSU is going to lose to Florida. Do you want to play this game?
I mean, losing to Florida versus the Naval Academy is
the Naval Academy would beat Florida right now.
I don't think that they would.
I don't think
that they would.
Navy could. Navy's the better of the two teams. I would take.
Well, we're going to find out. I saw this, but then Ross Dellinger. I know that you have connections to Ross. I want this question answered. I tweeted this out the other night. Did Army and Navy elect to not be a part of the playoff if they got in that situation?
No. So the way that it works is that where this becomes complicated is if they played in the American Conference Championship game. So they would effectively play in the American Conference Championship game, and then they would play in the Army-Navy game the following week. I believe that if either of them are
not
selected,
a playoff situation. Like
no.
People, okay, well, the article that he wrote made it feel like it was postseason play like that. And I thought that was kind of crazy. I mean, I could have read it wrong, but but the point I'm trying to get to,
because the first playoff game isn't until the 20th. So the point of the conversation is that the decision on the playoff seeding is going to happen before the Army-Navy game is played. That's what the whole point is here.
There's a legitimate chance. Okay, I know that we're starting off the show talking about service academies, but I think that's very.
Who cares?
But I think we need to talk about it. Joe, what if, let's just say hypothetically, we have 2 one-loss teams of the service academies going into that weekend.
And their one losses both being to a ranked Notre Dame team.
Hey.
Yeah.
Joe, do we get in a situation where we're having a debate about Boise State versus Navy? Because
I think that we do, yeah.
I mean, just out of my grandpa's service in World War II alone, I am going with the Naval Academy. You can turn me against the Naval Academy. I will never go against the Naval Academy. You have a blue turf. You're losers, okay? That's all I'm going to say. If the Navy midshipmen have one loss and it only being to Notre Dame, Navy needs to be in the playoffs, Joe.
First of all, it depends on how close Navy plays Notre Dame. Navy beats Notre Dame 1,000%. I think that they've proven that they're better than Boise State and that they should get in. But the argument right now that Boise State has, if they run the table, they'll have one loss by a few points to Oregon, who is probably going to be
on a last-second field goal.
Yeah, right? So I mean, that's always going to look great. They would need to replicate. Navy would need to replicate that. I should have put Navy ahead of LSU on my power rankings.
All right, now you're just being a buffoon.
The argument could be made.
Says the man wearing a note. Y'all hate Brian Kelly that much. You hate me that much that you can't get my
no.
By the way, did you see the doppelganger that was standing behind Brian Kelly?
Who is that guy? Is that his brother?
Know, but my wife just sent it to me, and she's like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "I have no idea who that is."
It's got to be like a security guy or something.
I look. One thing LSU does more than any other school, they have a crap load of analysts, and you know what Brian Kelly has done? Has like all these former OCs, like these older guys that think the way that he does, he's surrounded himself with him. So of course he does. Yes, men. I mean, let's just call them what they are, but we'll see. All right. So Joe, we'll go through our week 8 power rankings. That's going to be really fun. I got to throw this out there. You did this. You said this on Sunday. I'm going to remind you of it. Last 3 weeks, every single team, or 3 of the last 4 weeks, every single team that we put at 1 besides Texas has gone down the following week. So maybe we're a curse here. So sorry to Oregon and to Texas, but one of us has got to be right. One of us has got to be wrong here.
What's kind of funny right now, Oregon plays Purdue this week. There's a little bit of commotion from Purdue fans that I've seen on Twitter. I've seen on TikTok of all places that they think that they're going to pull the stuff, the crap that they pulled under Braum, where they upset, I think that it was Michigan State, Ohio State, and Iowa that were all top-ranked teams that they beat. I don't know if that's going to happen because you don't have Braum, but that would be absolutely hilarious.
So they're a really, really bad football team.
Yeah,
they're really bad. It's not happening. I don't care. It's not happening. Now, you do have a West.
Crazier things have happened. We had a season that started off with NIU.
I mean, Notre Dame lost to NIU. You're right. There are crazier things that have happened.
Vandy won a freaking football game over the number 1 team.
I mean, you're right. Vandy beat Bama, but I mean, Vandy's a good football team. So I don't know. So we'll get to those week 8 power rankings. We'll also go through our week 8 picks. There is a new leader in the clubhouse that remains a 2-point lead. I got you, Bob, but I said this last week, man. We've been much better on these game picks throughout the year.
Nothing's gonna change today though, because we both have all of the same picks. So
you change your Boston College?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was wondering what the deal with Castellanos was, and it sounds like he's out. So I'm sticking with
either he's out or he's hurt. I mean, something's up with him. Regardless. So we'll see with that. By the way, talked to a buddy of mine this week, actually, but I don't know if he wants us out there. But looking like Haynes King might not be able to go this week too. So that happens. Notre Dame. Yeah, getting a massive break. That kid can really play. All right, so we'll get to that. And then UCF and Iowa State. UCF coming off a quarterback change, moving away from KJ Jefferson. And then Iowa State, who may be the Big 12 front runner, which I got to be real with you. We're going to be talking about a lot of Iowa State before I have the break because I'm going to start off with there. I have an issue with you having them in your top 10 power rankings.
Why?
Because I think that there's probably 4 or 5 other teams that would beat Iowa State right now.
No, you got to give Iowa State more credit, man.
No way. No way.
All right, let's save it for after the break because I don't even know who those 4 or 5 teams would be.
Do you take Notre Dame over Iowa State right now? Because I do.
No.
Oh, 100%. How am I? You gonna make me defend Notre Dame? You gonna really make me defend Notre Dame right now?
The way that Iowa State's playing defense at the current moment, I don't know why I would think that Notre Dame would.
2 words. You ready? Jeremiah
that.
Love. That's the end of the conversation.
Look at how they played against Iowa with Caleb Johnson, who's one of the most productive running backs in the country. They let him go off, and they took away everything else.
So Iowa hasn't had a moderately good offense since the Clinton administration.
But look at Caleb Johnson's stats. Like, I'm serious. He's leading, one of the leaders in the country besides Ashton Genty. He's one of the leaders in the country right now in rushing.
Yeah. Well, all they do is run the football. They better bleed in something.
All Notre Dame does is run the football. All right, we'll talk about it after the break.
We'll talk about it after the break. But there are some 2-loss teams. Like, I would put Ole Miss above Iowa State.
Absolutely not.
Joe, on a neutral field right now, Iowa State would not be favored over Ole Miss.
All right, we'll save it for after the break.
All right, well, so we'll get to that. But UCF is the game versus Iowa State that we'll break down here as well. We got any super chats before we get rolling, just to make sure? No. Okay. Let's talk about our good friends, Joe, over at betonline.ag. When we return, we'll come back and break down our Week 8 power rankings. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. Well, you know, Joe, I've been waiting to ask you this all week long. With a Texas win over Georgia, are we going to officially say that Texas is quote unquote back?
I guess. Yeah, sure. Yes, we will say that. I know the Texas fans are going to be mad at us because we keep moving the goalposts according to them. But yeah, I would say that we would argue that they are back. That's the biggest win that they. It's bigger than the. Is it bigger than the Alabama win?
It's not bigger than the Alabama because I'll tell you why. Because look, I don't think that people thought that Texas could go into that place with that man as the head coach and win. And to be truthful, outside of Kirby, Sark's the only assistant to ever beat Nick that he's had. I look, no, not because of the emotion behind it. Texas has arrived. They get to a playoff the year before they come into the SEC. Joe, I can't. No, I don't think it's bigger than Bama, but it would definitely put a stamp on them being back, in my humble opinion. You know, I just feel like emotion plays a lot into this too. You know, I mean, so. Man, they'll be back. Speaking of Texas being back, let's go through some of these power rankings. Joe, your top 10 in Week 8. How do you have it listed?
Number 1, I've got Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Georgia. Number 5, actually, I kind of already hate that. No, I should have put Georgia ahead of Texas. Number 5, Miami. Number 6, Penn State. Number 7, Clemson. Number 8, Alabama. Number 9, Iowa State. And number 10, LSU. The reason why I brought up the Georgia-Texas thing, because, I mean, I'm picking Georgia to win. Now that I'm thinking about that, I should have put Georgia ahead of Texas. That's a mistake on my part.
Yeah, I don't think, Joe, and we talk about this every week, I don't think you should have done that because you're going based off of what you've seen through 8 weeks, not what's going to happen in Week 8, what you've seen.
Well, but the decision is based on who I think wins at a neutral site. That's what goes into all this. That's how I crafted it this week now that we have enough evidence. I would say that if they squared off with one another, I would pick Georgia to beat Texas.
Well, you're going to do that a little bit later. Just to give you mine here, not a lot changes, Joe, other than maybe the first couple of 3 here for us. But Texas at number 1 for me, Oregon 2, Ohio State 3, Georgia 4, Miami 5, Alabama 6, Penn State 7, Clemson at number 8. I want to continue to keep eyes on Clemson, Joe. They're now the leader on BetOnline to be the ACC champion. Number 9, LSU, and number 10, Texas A&M. I got to start off with yours very quickly, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So I think that there's a lot of teams out there, and I love the Iowa State hype. I love the Iowa State team. I love it. However, I just don't think on a neutral field they can beat Ole Miss. Like I don't think that they can beat Texas A&M. Joe, if A&M and Iowa State lined up today, I know that you're taking A&M. Like, and so the part that I'm trying to make here, I'm with you on having them on the fringe. Maybe some teams lose out here, get their second loss. Iowa State started getting in here. But I cannot, for the life of me, like, Joe, A&M's a better football team than Iowa State.
I see. My problem is that it's being deemed like a foregone conclusion. I don't think that's the case. I think that what we've seen so far, yes, the Big 12 and the schedule that Iowa State has faced is obviously lighter than some of these SEC schedules, but there are plenty of deficiencies for a number of these SEC teams that you're bringing up. I don't see balanced teams. I see a balanced Iowa State team. I think that they could fight for 4 quarters and pull out a win over any of those teams. Do I think it's a slam dunk sure thing? No. I think that there is a jumble of teams that could fit in that 9-10 spot. We could probably name off 5 teams that would be in that conversation. But I don't think it's fair to say that Iowa State doesn't deserve to be in that convo. They have been consistent throwing the football. Rocco Beck has been a very efficient passer. We're going to talk about this in the preview. They've been running the ball effectively, and their defense is super underrated. They've been a hair banged up, but their linebackers, their defensive tackles, their edge rushers, they've got a really good front seven. I would argue that because of how well built that they are, that they could handle their own if they played against one of these SEC teams that has had
handle their own and winning are two completely different things, though.
I think it applies to the conversation because you're kind of implying that they wouldn't be able to hold their own.
Here's where I would look at it, okay? I think defensively, you're right. They've been a lot better than I think in the preseason when we talked about them and we broke them down in our preview. I don't think that they've seen a defense or offensive line that's been that physical, and I think it could get ugly. Like, I mean, Joe,
Iowa, you don't think that Iowa's offensive line is physical?
Both, but I said offense and defensive line. And be honest with you.
And their defensive line is
and
physical.
To be honest with you, Iowa is not saying the same defensively, especially in their secondary. Joe, they're in the top 75, where they're normally in the top 10 in passing yards allowed. I like Rocco Beck. Look, I like Iowa State. I don't want to come out here and poo-poo on them. They're a great story. They're in the mix of winning the Big 12. But I would have Notre Dame, Tennessee, LSU, and A&M ahead of them if I had to pick. And 2 of those are in mine. I just cannot see a world like, Joe, you mean to tell me right now that you had a game in Council Bluffs, well, let me back up, not putting it in Iowa. You got a game in Orlando, Florida, and you're not putting Tennessee and Iowa State, and you're not taking Tennessee? I don't believe you.
Because I think a lot of the yeah, I mean, you should believe me. A lot of the issues that we've seen those teams have to this point, like Tennessee's a perfect example. Their play calling hasn't been good, and Nico has been off with his accuracy. So there's no reason for me to buy in on that. LSU, they're turning the ball over a ton. They're making a lot of mistakes. They're not turning to their run game when they should be. I think that could hurt them in this matchup. Texas A&M is the one that I think has the best argument that I was seriously debating putting in there.
Well, because they beat down on a top 10 opponent.
Well, they did, but the weeks prior to that, and I know that they were without Connor Weigman, and they were trying to figure out the direction that they were going in, but they have a couple of dud week performances on their schedule that they haven't played well, especially the Bowling Green game. So like I just think that this Iowa State team is underappreciated. And I think teams that are playing balanced, good football deserve recognition. It's not like I'm trying to make the case for a one-loss Iowa State team. I'm trying to make the case here for an undefeated Iowa State team that has, I would argue, dominated their way through their schedule. The only close game that they have this year is against Iowa. And that's a tough out. That's a tough opponent on the road in a tough place to win.
Joe, just so that we're understanding here, okay? You're putting them right below the category of Alabama in your power rankings. I get Bama's had some massive struggles, right? And I get that. But it's a little too rich for me because I don't think that they can compete on both lines of scrimmage. I don't. I think their O-line has been good enough. But, Joe, I mean, again, we're saying A&M do this against SEC opponents, right? Like run the ball at will. They're winning games without their starting quarterback, as you alluded to.
But we got to just ignore the Bowling Green game? Like, they played like ass against Bowling Green.
Okay, that's fair. But we also saw a team that's borderline top 10 lose. I'm going to keep throwing that out there. But, I mean, Joe, we saw LSU struggle against two inferior opponents. We've seen Miami go on the road and at home almost lose to inferior opponents. Clemson got beat down there in our top 10. I mean, I get that, but it just comes to a part where, man, I cannot put them there yet. Where they ultimately get there, if they continue to win, yes. Right now, I'm out on putting them in a top 10 kind of conversation.
I think that you're underestimating their line play. I mean, they have the best line play in the conference.
With a name like Rocco, I'm sure he's got an Italian mother, and God bless her. She probably cooks fantastic. With a name like Rocco at quarterback, I want to have you in there. I just can't do it. So, all right, let's move on. What are some other teams that we want to get to here? Where do you want to start off at?
Let's pull up yours really I don't want to waste any energy talking about LSU for me.
No.
As I said earlier, I kind of just felt obligated to put them in there because there's no right answer in those last two spots. There really isn't. And I don't think that LSU right now is a complete team. I don't think that they're playing sound enough football to like firmly say they're the 9th team on here. The argument can be made for a number of other teams to be placed in there. Those are my thoughts on LSU.
Would they have a common opponent that has gone toe-to-toe with multiple teams inside that top 10? Bama and LSU have a common opponent. They're just coming off a top 10 win against Ole Miss, and that team defense. Look, I think they're in a dogfight this weekend. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You're not going to agree with me, but if they go on the road in that place I think if they handle themselves these next 3 weeks before they go into bye in Bama, they'll be justified. But I understand what you're saying. I think it's going to take more than one game for you to feel like you've justified that pick. So yeah. You want to get to Texas? Because I know that there's been a lot of questions about Texas. I have them at 1. You have them at 3.
I'm surprised you put them at 1, if I'm being completely honest. I would have thought that – I mean, look, I'm going to just get to the Oregon side of this thing. I don't know how you can't see what Oregon did last week and not feel pretty good about their performance. They have shown the most to me out of any program that we've watched to this point. The way that they played against Ohio State is replicable, and if they play that way – against Texas, if they play that way against Georgia, against Alabama, they will win those football games. Their performance on both lines of scrimmage, which is an important conversation for all of this stuff, and the way that they are able to create offensively to generate big defensive stops when they needed to, I think that this team is tremendous. I don't think that they stay at that number 1 spot. I think that they're going to end up moving when they lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, but I feel the most secure about them at the current moment over Texas.
Joe, how good is Ohio State? And have we made that determination yet? Because
I put them at number 2. I think that the Ohio State team is equally as good. They just got beat.
All right, this is what I'm not going to do, and I'm not going to fight over some small semantics on it, okay? Because I think that you're right in reference to Oregon and Ohio State. I think one team had to lose, and it was what it was. The home team got the advantage. Joe, I'm willing to be wrong about Texas. I do have Georgia winning this week, but man, they kind of dominated. You know what I mean? I mean, like they dominated a top 25 opponent last week.
I'm surprised you're turning heel to the Texas fans.
I'm not turning heel to I'm going based off of what's happened the first 7 weeks and the first 7 games that we've seen them play. Now, I'm going to I will say this. I'm standing on my feet here. I'm picking Georgia to win. But I'm going based off of what I've seen the first 7 weeks. And based off of they have a really good offensive line that could be dominant, a really good defensive line that really could be dominant. They have 6 weapons at receiver that could be really good. I don't trust them at quarterback. That's been my main issue.
You're saying – I don't mean to cut you off, but like there's one key word that comes into this. You're saying could. Like I don't think could should be applied for a team that's number 1 in a power ranking. That's where I feel uneasy, and that's why I think that they deserve to be at 3 or 4 until they beat Georgia, and we know that there's legitimate. Because how many times have we seen this in the history of college football, where teams they blow through the start of their schedule, and we think that they're so good, and then they finally face a top opponent, and none of that stuff translates, and then they lose. I'm not saying that Texas is bad and that they're overrated. I just feel uneasy claiming that they're this number one best team when they have beaten up on some pretty bad opponents.
They have, man. They have. But I've also seen, I mean, look, I'm not going to try to justify this. Michigan's not a good football team, not to the standards that we hold them to. They were in a dogfight with a USC team that had dogfights with Penn State, had a dogfight with Michigan, had a dogfight with LSU. They went 1-2 in them, right? Like, I mean, they beat a Michigan team that still had what we thought was a top 10 win. It's not now, and I get that, but I'm not saying Ohio State's falling out of the top 10 by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just not. I mean, I had them at 2 last week. I mean, I'm trying to be as consistent as I can. I'm not going to move them back when I had Oregon. I mean, Joe, last week I had Oregon at 6. Man, I moved them up 4 spots. I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, 7 spots to be moved here. I mean, and if we're going to talk about Oregon, Joe, you're a missed field goal away from losing to Boise State. Like, the Idaho game still does exist.
Wait, hold on. How come you made an excuse for Texas A&M earlier, and then now all of a sudden it's an issue for Boise State's going to go to the playoff.
Context has to matter here. You're in a year one head coach with A&M. Their standard and what their situation is different than Oregon and Dan Lanning in year 3 or year 4, whatever it is.
But the context of going up against the best player in the country and eking out that win is different than barely beating
Ashton Jeanty is not the best player in the country. I'm sorry.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
He is. Who's better than him?
Oh, I can name probably 4.
Not 4. I would argue Travis Hunter would be 1.
Travis Hunter is overall a better player than him.
Obviously, he plays both sides.
Yeah. I mean, are you not going to – if one of these quarterbacks start emerging, you're going to put one of those quarterbacks in there? Yes, you will.
It's been 6 weeks. I'm not going to do that.
I got to be real with you.
Sorry, it's been 8. We're up to 8 weeks.
Hold on. Stop. Dylan Gabriel did something that Ashton Jeanty couldn't.
I'm not putting Dylan. I would never put Dylan Gabriel ahead of Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty has single-handedly carried them this whole run. This is an average Boise State team that he is carrying them.
Dylan Gabriel beat him.
Okay, that math ain't mathin' right there. The quarterback beating a running back. That math ain't mathin'.
Ashton Jeanty's not the best player in the country.
If you didn't play that game, Boise State loses by 30.
Okay. So look, I'm not going to fight over semantics. Who you want to put at 1, 2, and 3? You know, I mean, look, fair. I'm just not going to do it. Like I can argue here. I think everybody's got arguments. The only team that we didn't talk about in here is Ohio State, really. I mean, well, okay. To be honest with you, Ohio. Yeah. If we're going to be real, let's just be real for just a moment. Does Ohio State deserve to be over Georgia and Miami? Because the only tough opponent that they faced, they lost to.
Well, they lost to them by. Okay, look, I think that for a circumstance like this, and our good friend Josh Pate, who put out his JP poll, took a lot of heat for putting them at number 1, which was pretty funny. I'm not going to go that far. But they still are a very, very good football team. Arguably still the best team in the country. That got beat on the road. That's all that happened and that came into that. I think that they're more well-rounded than any team in the country. Sometimes those teams lose. Teams aren't always going to be perfect. I just like I don't want to bail on them because of one game. I think it's overly reactionary to do that.
Yeah, fair. Again, we're fighting over semantics on who should be 1, 2, and 3.
We're talking about Penn State. I think that.
Yeah, I was going to get to them next. You know, Joe, a team that's been in our power rankings the last 3 or 4 weeks here has been Penn State, and we hadn't talked about them once. They go out to USC and an overtime win. You have them at 6. I have them at 7. Look, man, I think Penn State, for what it's worth, they have overcome some challenges. I think that they're not a complete team, right? Like, I don't think that they're a complete team yet. They're finding ways to win tough football games. And, Joe, they're one of the only couple pair of teams that have faced better competition. Now, they haven't faced a premier opponent in reference to, like, one of the big dogs, but they beat down on USC in overtime. Tyler Warren has, 17 catches in that game?
Yeah.
They beat an Illinois team, Joe, that was ranked at the time that they played them. They win that football game. Look, I think Penn State is Penn State. Like, I do. I think Drew Allar's been, Joe, so much better. He looks more confident. And I know that he had 3 picks last week. He did not look good. But at the same time, he's throwing the ball with conviction. Last year, he did not throw the ball with any conviction. For that and that alone, I like them. I think that the real only challenge that they have is going to be against Ohio State later in the season. I know that game's at home for them. But can that running game continue to be good? Can they get a little bit healthier? And if they do, maybe they can make a run here. But, Joe, they're going to be in the playoff. I mean, like, unless there's a total collapse, which I don't see happening, they're going to be in the playoff.
I agree with you on Allar, and I broke down his film against USC. I think that one thing that helps this team and what makes them so much better is that Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, has done such a great job of alleviating pressure off of his shoulders. It felt like against Ohio State and Michigan last year, there was a ton of pressure on his shoulders for them to win. Like, he had to play a great game, and he didn't because he was so young and green to those situations. So when he plays bad, they're able to find other ways to win by getting creative, getting Tyler Warren the football. Man, like that kid was doing so many different crazy things in this game. He took a snap under center in a short yardage situation. He snapped the ball, which we talked about. They have the best tight end in the country, in my opinion, in Tyler Warren, who's a freak, underrated athlete. I think that
State fans were in here yelling at us when we didn't have Tyler Warren in our top 5 tight ends coming into the season too. They were mad.
Oh, wait! I could have sworn I had Tyler Warren in mine.
No,
I don't know about that one, brother. I'm pretty sure I had Tyler Warren.
You said that he was overrated and couldn't block.
Okay, you didn't. I know those words did not come out of my mouth. They absolutely did not. To get back to what I was saying, our tight end rankings in retrospect were terrible because we had Yurcek and I had Mitchell Evans in there, and oh my God, those guys haven't done anything. But what we were saying though here with this Penn State team, I think that the most that they can peak up to is 5. I don't think that they're going to cross further, and it comes down to in a big game against a team like Ohio State where scheme will help you, but doesn't ultimately win you the football game. I don't know. I still don't know if I can trust Drew Allar to not make mistakes. His accuracy sometimes is off. And then one of the other things that, like, when he's not in a one read situation, that's where the mistakes tend to show up. I think he's going to be a future NFL starter, but right now he's 2 years away from that and he's still figuring things out. He could be what holds them back when they play Ohio State.
Very fair. I don't disagree with that. I do love that he's throwing the ball with conviction, right? Yeah. And look, man, here's the truth. I think there's something to be said when you're playing one of the worst games of your season and you as a team find a way to come back. Look, man, James Franklin does not lose the games he's not supposed to. Very rarely does that happen. It's been the big boys that he's gone up against that he hasn't found ways to win. And that is who Penn State is. They're going to stand on business, and they're going to fight like hell to get one of those wins. But, Joe, I mean, again, they're a playoff caliber team. They can run the football effectively. I still like Kotelnicki. We talked about him. We talk about him so much. The creativity that he does and he uses is great. So we'll see. What other team you want to get to here? I know that we got Bama, Miami. We talked a lot about Miami this week. Little old Clemson's in there.
Little old, is that how we want to describe them?
I mean, that's how Dabo describes the little old Clemson.
You've got Bama at 6. I moved them down to 8. I mean, can we address the uneasiness for them?
Yeah, sure. Let's get Bama. Yeah.
And you also, if you have Tennessee's in yours, Tennessee.
No, I don't.
Talk about both the.
No, I don't.
Oh, you're right. You didn't put Tennessee in there.
Yeah, I don't have Tennessee in there.
Ignore me. I think even if Bama beats Tennessee, that I'm not going to move them up any further. Look, the problems are that I have addressed on here. I think that Alabama still has the ceiling to be a top 5-4 team, win the SEC this year. Like it's still there. I just think it's such a long process that a lot of people don't really understand of building chemistry with a roster when you're a head coach and trying to get guys to like fully buy in, play fundamentally sound, disciplined football. They are going to be a few weeks away from like getting that figured out if they ever make those fixes. So I got to kind of put them on pause until they start playing cleaner football.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, man. I still think South Carolina, I say this every week because this is what we do. I understand that they lost to Vandy, and that's non-excusable. Okay, like I get it. I'm with you. But they struggle against South Carolina, and other teams have struggled against South Carolina. I mean, Joe, for what it's worth, so did LSU, and then in the second half, they physically dominated Ole Miss offensively. Jackson Dart was 2 of 8 in the second half with 50 yards passing. They could do nothing. Now, I get that South Carolina's offense is dookie. Their defense is not dookie at all. I mean, again, I feel like I'm going to repeat every single week about them. They found a way to win that football game. You know, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't nice. It's not the way that we have built Bama and the establishment of who they are because of who they've been with and who their head coach has been. But, man, yeah, I mean, you have them at 7, I have them at 6, or you have them at 8.
No, I have them at 8. I moved them back further.
I don't. I mean, they got a lot that they have to fix, Joe. A lot that's got to be fixed. I don't know what to make of them as a team yet. I think that there are multiple. Like, did you see this thing this week about Brooks Austin and some other podcast getting into it? Just
yeah,
I'm not going to get into that. But like they were saying, y'all need to stop criticizing coaching. And listen, I'm not trying to be rude here, but Brooks isn't wrong. Like everything that he said,
of course, the guy's a former coach. Of course, a former coach is saying you need to stop criticizing coaching. It was so stupid of a thing, but
But
I understand sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was trying to get to here. My flaws with them or my issues with Bama is not necessarily all coming down to execution. A lot of it has come down to play calling and things that you've done on the defensive side of the football. I mean, Joe, to be real with you, Kalen DeBoer is going to have to learn to hand that rock off to Jam Miller if you're going to get like getting 5 and 6 yards in the running game at Pop is what you've been doing. That's how you win this league, right? Like that's how you win it. You know who else had to struggle with that coming into the SEC too? I might add, because I was here and grew up watching him do it. Was Saban. Saban would get a quarterback, man. Him and Jimbo, they throw it 40 times in a game. And like, what are we doing? Like, run the ball. He's going to have to learn to start handing that rock off to Justice Hayes and Jam Miller.
Yeah. No, I agree. They need to be making better decisions. There's just a lot of things that need to get corrected, and I think that they're worthy of being top 10. But multiple sloppy weeks in a row makes me feel uneasy about them, and I'm fearful that they're going to drop another one.
So I can tell I'm having some internet issues. Is it bad?
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. Okay. You cut out a tiny bit, but you're good.
Okay. Look, there's one final thing I want to get to with you here before we get moving. We got about a minute. I had Texas A&M in my top 10. You did not. And I know we kind of mentioned them a little bit earlier. Joe, I think they're a good football team, man. I think they're better than what people are giving them credit for.
I just have a little bit of pause for a team with a first-year head coach, specifically with what we saw with Kalen DeBoer and with Alabama. There's going to be down weeks, you know, and I think that this team is great up front. I think that their offense is humming, but we really only have like one super big marquee game for them, like one marquee performance. I'm just a little wary on what comes out of it. They're 11 for me. They're right there. And I actually kind of regret not putting them at 10 over LSU.
You're doing that just to piss me off.
No, I'm serious. That was like a decision I came down to. I was debating doing that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that as a joke.
All right. Want to get the game picks here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we do have a new leader in the clubhouse was last week, but I did go up one more on you here, Joe. I'm 51-19. You're 49-21. I'll say this. We're both much better in these game picks in year 2 of the podcast and year 2 of the show. But let's go through some of these Premier matchup of the weekend, Georgia versus Texas. Both of us going with the Bulldogs.
As I said before in the preview, Blake, I think that there is something to be said about having a really good football team and a great coaching staff. I am stunned by the amount of Texas fans that are just writing off Georgia and they think that they're like overrated and they're riding off of their brand value. That's just not true. This roster is still very talented. There's still a lot of really good football players on this team. And again, this is the best coaching staff in the country. Losing one game early and almost rallying back, I think supplies them with
rally back.
Right.
Back.
They still lost, but to show that they were able to identify their issues at halftime kind of tells me that Georgia is going to get right for this game and they're going to be focused and they're going to find a way to win this ball game. I think that Texas, to their credit, has been phenomenal, but first big matchup in the SEC seems like more of a daunting task than everybody wants to mention.
The thing about this game for me is I still think that secondary can be had. Now, I think that Georgia's got to find a way to, at some point, find a way to run the football. I did not think I would come into the season saying Georgia cannot run the football with Trevor Etienne. It's Trevor.
Trevor Etienne.
Okay.
Travis is the one in the NFL.
Okay, I always get them mixed up. I always call one the other and one, either way. But they can't run the football. They're 92nd in the country, or they haven't wanted to run the football, I should say. They're 92nd in the country there. Joe, I told you this week. I'm going to repeat myself. I wouldn't be surprised either way, man. I really, really, really wouldn't. I think this is as close to a pick 'em as we're going to get in the weekend. Look, man, I just don't. I didn't pick Texas because I don't think I don't know enough about them. I don't feel not against an opponent like this. It's not a shot to them. That's my own personal thing. Texas fans can hate it. If you win, I will be the least shocked human being on the face of the planet. That's just how I view the game. But we'll see.
If Texas, I don't think this is like a lock. I said it 52%.
No, here I'm about 15% confident on this. Like if it goes either way, that's how close I am. I have to pick a winner here. There's areas I don't trust Georgia in, but I don't know. There's, again, we've talked about it all week. I just don't. I don't know what I don't know about them.
Yeah, got to go with the team who's been tested more.
I agree. Alabama and Tennessee, both of us going with the Crimson Tide.
I stand by that. I believe, Blake, that the issues that Tennessee is dealing with, their offense has been sputtering, feels like a confidence issue. That is not something that gets fixed in 1 week. And I think that this Alabama offense gets the opportunity to produce and to win. If this ends up being a close game, that they can find a way to win and eke out a late drive. This is what it's going to come down to. If I got to pick one quarterback and there's 4 minutes left in the game and each has a shot to go down and march down the field and win the football game, I'm going with Jalen Milroe. I'm going with Alabama.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And look, I keep hearing from very smart people that do this for a living like us. I've heard a lot of them make very good points about Tennessee. When's going to be that breakout moment for Nico? Where there's a lot of truth to that, okay? You're hoping picking Tennessee. You're hoping. There's nothing that you're like legitimately looking at and saying that he's giving you enough confidence against a team like this. Okay, we're down on Bama. They've struggled in moments. They're still a really freaking good football team. It's by far and remotely not close to the biggest test that Tennessee's had. Joe, Arkansas. There's my answer. Arkansas. Because I saw a defense that it does not have the same amount of talent, regardless if you do go man-man, okay? If you do go gotcha coverage. All right, now, y'all going to keep playing with Bama. Some of y'all going to keep playing with them. I ain't playing with them. All right. So I can't believe I got to be the one to defend Bama like that. But I'm just kind of like, dude.
I mean, if you listen to the segment we did on Monday, you would have thought that you were the biggest
Alabama hater.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yelling that segment.
These people. All right, LSU and Arkansas. I wish you went with Arkansas here, but we're both going with the Tigers.
I actually might. Well, I'm debating walking this back because Taylor Green's supposed to play. or he might play, but banged up quarterback. I mean, it's a tough situation. This game's always close. I am of the belief that I think that the Arkansas game is more of a flash in the pan than it is a direct indication of future success. I think that this team is playing better than everybody expected, and I was a supporter of them in the preseason. But LSU, this game means more to them. They need to win this game. They've got better athletes at a couple of positions.
Don't tell that to them.
If Garrett
it's
Nuss,
a big rivalry.
I know. Well, I'm saying that in this circumstance, like LSU's playoff hopes are on the line. A 2-loss LSU team with the remaining games on their schedule, having to go to College Station, is a really tough spot for them to be put in. I think LSU wins it though. Their O-line play, all that stuff's going to step up.
I just went. I in a game like this, I went coaching staff. Now, Brian Kelly has been really good at home at LSU. I mean, Joey's lost one game in 3 years. I mean, it's not bad. They've struggled when they've gone on the road. And I question the maturity of LSU. I mean, look, LSU's in a tough spot. If they win this one, I think people need to give it a little bit more credit, but it's going to be tough. Taylor Green is a go per Matt Zenitz. We'll see. I mean,
right.
We'll see. All right. Let's get to a couple more here. Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech. Both of us going with Notre Dame, and we both have Illinois over Michigan.
Notre Dame, I think dealing with a banged-up Haynes King or a Haynes King who is unavailable is going to be huge for them. We saw what they did last week against Ashton Daniels, who was also banged up for Stanford. That takes away a ton for that rushing attack for Georgia Tech. It's going to be a big game, though. The Brent Key's hyping it up, so I wouldn't put it past him. It's going to be in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, which I actually didn't know until I was doing my preview notes.
Next year?
No, it's this year. It's at the Mercedes-Benz Dome.
Oh,
let me double check that.
Maybe it is. Maybe I was wrong.
No, it is. Yeah, it's in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Okay. But the Illinois-Michigan game, we discussed this. Give me the defense that turns over opposing quarterbacks, the clip that they're currently doing it against a team that they have no idea who their starting quarterback is, without a doubt.
If Haynes King can't go and he's out, I mean, that Notre Dame has no business losing. It doesn't stop what I think that they could do, that they're still a really physical football team. So we'll see there. As well. In reference to Illinois, I'm with you. I just don't trust Nebraska enough. Not yet. So I think Illinois gets the win here. Indiana. Speaking of Nebraska, why did I say Nebraska? I meant Michigan. Why did I even say that? It's because of the next game we're talking about. Indiana over Michigan. Both of us going with the Italian Kirk Cignetti.
I really like this Indiana team. I'm hoping that they win it. It's been such a fun story to track. I don't think that they're a playoff team, but their offense, if there is a team that's going to outscore their opponent and create too much of a gap for them to storm back, I'm taking Indiana. I'm taking Curtis Rourke. I'm taking Kurt Cignetti.
They can't score enough. That's why. They can't score enough. And I think Cignetti's going to find a way to get points. Rourke has been really good, Joe, by the way. I mean, again, I talked about this when I was previewing UCLA earlier this year. Their wide receivers and the separation that they get is insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Like what they're doing is insane. They got great play calling. Just give me Indiana when we're going with the Italian here. Miami over Louisville is where we're both going there, Joe.
Man, I really think that Miami's going to really make a statement here, man. I still
be careful.
This Louisville team is so overrated. They're not that good. They played one good game against Georgia Tech. I really think that Miami coming out of the bye is going to play cleaner football and that they're going to wallop Louisville.
Every time you say it, the crazy shit happens.
I know.
I'm taking the Louisville points here. You have given me the stamp of approval.
It's a 4-point spread. That's a terrible bet.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Every time you say a team's going to get blown out, I've learned my lesson. It's called maturity, buddy.
There's no maturity there. It's one of my best bets of the week, and I'm hitting a very successful clip on my bets that have been given out on VSiN, so I'm sticking behind that.
All right. I do have Miami over the Louisville, though. I am surprised that you went with this next one. You got Auburn over Missouri.
What do you mean? We did the whole preview. We both agreed that we think it's an upset.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if you were going the full way with Auburn.
I'm in on it. Another one of my best bets this week, 6.5 plus 6.5 per bet online. I do not like Missouri's offensive line. Auburn has a very underrated front. They're getting a ton of pressures. 1,000% war damn Eagle.
Bro, I just don't trust it. If there's any pick that I have on this, like going into the week that I just don't trust, it's Auburn. It's Auburn. I
know it's a fair point. They're going to turn over to them.
I mean, we think that, and then watch Missouri go out there and absolutely smack that ass. But man, give me War Damn Eagle too. I think they've been better than some people are giving them credit for. Joe, Arizona State versus Cincy. Arizona State coming off a big win against Utah. Now they go up against the Cincy team. Arizona State, I mean, look, they're going with a new quarterback here this week, but they've been running the football. Yeah, they've been running the football very effectively too. I mean, Dillingham has really got some things going at Arizona State, only a one-loss football team.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, no, mate, it's not Emory Jones. I'm mixing up with.
No, it's not Emory Jones. It's
somebody else. Shit. It's gonna buy
the kid that was in Nebraska.
Jeff Sims. He's played a ton of football. I'm not worried about that. Cam Scattaboo runs through everybody. I think Cincinnati, Paper Tiger, they barely beat UCF last week. I'm 1,000% going with them.
Arizona State, the number one party school in the country, actually being good at football. That place is going to erupt. So we'll see there. All right, Boston College versus Virginia Tech. You went with BC. You say you might change it. I'm going to go with the Hokies here.
Found out Castellanos might not play in this game, so I'm switching to the Hokies. So ignore the graphic. Give me the Hokies.
Okay, ignore the graphic. So we're picking all the same.
Yeah, we have all the same picks.
All right, well, it'll be a stress-free Saturday with me, so I don't have to worry about. See, you know, when LSU played on this, it was the only game that we differed on last week.
Yeah, but it's not like
I wanted the extra win. I wanted to start to separate.
That's not why you were stressed. 100% you were stressed because your team.
No, you're right. It's not why I picked them. No, it's not why I picked them. However, I just want to say this. It's what puts more stress on me because I got to win over you, man. I'm a competitive guy.
I don't think that was the reasoning. I hate that we have all the same picks. I tried to throw in as many games in there, but I thought you were going to give me some crazy shit on those last two, but you know too much.
Yeah, I know. Oh, thanks. That's a very good compliment. Joe, let's wrap it up here very quickly. UCF versus Iowa State. I know that we talked about Iowa State earlier in the show, and I hope that Iowa State fans don't go and listen. But in reference to this game, or do go listen, but in reference to this game, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I keep coming back to, man, I really think that this Iowa State team is incredibly stellar. And UCF right now, they have been on a really just painful stretch. They got whooped by Colorado. They struggled against Florida, which I didn't think was going to be a close game. And then lastly, this game against Cincinnati was super disappointing. They started Ja'Cory Brown, who's a very young kid at quarterback, who showed some nice positive things. But I think that this UCF team is kind of in it feels like a rebuild mode. You know, they're not in that competitive range that we thought that they were coming into the game. RJ Harvey's a great back, but I think that Iowa State front seven, as I keep referencing and bringing up, Dominic Orange is a future NFL defensive tackle. They are getting after everybody. They're stopping the run. They're producing pressures. They played a freaking great game against West Virginia that a ton of experts were picking West Virginia to get that upset. So,
not all the experts.
Not on this show. Not on this show. We weren't doing that. I really like this Iowa State team. I think that this is another momentum builder for them to get a big win.
I just love what they're doing, man. You know, it's crazy. We talked about this in the preseason. Remember when we were talking about Iowa State's schedule? I was like, Joe, you know what's crazy? Under Matt Campbell, every 4 years, they absolutely explode. Remember, we were talking about how every 4 years they beat Iowa. They just have to go through a 4-year rebuild. This is their rebuild. Now, I still need to see them run the football a little bit more. Show me more of you being a complete team. They've actually not been running it bad. I think they're one of the most underrated wide receiver corps in the country, and I am not underestimating.
Noel are fantastic receivers.
Yeah, and look, we talked about that in the preseason too. Like, hey, man, that receiving corps can be really good. I'm picking Iowa State here, okay? But I just got to throw one thing in there. When you wear your hat like that, Matt Campbell, at some point you're going to get upset.
Okay, so Iowa State fans are going to tune into this, and now you're
I'm just saying.
Throwing shots.
I like Matt Campbell. He seems like a great guy. He's got to fix the way he wears his hat. But other than that, I think Iowa State's here to stay, man. I think they're going to have a good year. They're going to be one of those teams we're talking about, borderline Big 12 champion. You know, how is BYU? What's up with Colorado? I mean, we're going to be continue to talk about them in Kansas State too. I just like them, man. They're a really good football team. They show up every week, and defensively, they haven't been as bad as maybe some thought that they would be early in the season.
And I don't think that this is going to be the week that Iowa State, if they were to slip up, that they will. This is, with the situation at quarterback for UCF, just feels like, again, another stackable moment. Texas Tech on the second after a bye week, I think it's going to be a really highly talked about game that we do on this show, because Texas Tech has had a sneaky good season thus far. Shout out the Red Raiders for putting us in their hype video. And outside of that, they do play Iowa and Kansas State to finish out their season. But this isn't going to be that week. This UCF squad struggling.
I forgot about that. I forgot that Red Raiders for life, baby. I forgot about the Red Raiders. Rocco Becht is completing 66% of his passes, Joe. 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, about 1,500 yards passing. One of the better quarterbacks, not only in the Big 12, but in the country, throwing the football around. Man, he's just mature and making right decisions. And I think for me, that's what I look at. I know he had a bad pick in a rivalry game against Iowa, but man, the final drive that he had at the end of the game there, the way that they looked, they're just like, I feel like he's the guy that we'll be talking about in April. Oh, yeah. Man, you know what? Rocco Becht to the Jets, that's an underrated pick. You know, like I like the kid. I don't know if he's got traits or if he'll ever be like an NFL starter, but I just really
not Brock Purdy. He's not Brock Purdy.
No, I know that, but I really liked – well, I forgot about Brock Purdy being from Iowa State, but, I mean, regardless, I do like this kid. He does a lot of really good things, man.
Absolutely. No, great football player. The resilience he had in that game was commendable.
Absolutely. All right. So, hey, Iowa State, don't disappoint us. Matt Campbell, straighten your hat out, son. That's how we're going to end the show. So we'll see y'all on Sunday. Y'all have a good one. Peace.